This is a video to please pass on to anyone who questions the outcome of the U.S. presidential 2020 election, which looks to be about 70% of Republicans. Try to keep an open mind when you see this. There's a phenomenon called confirmation bias that you don't want to fall into. So thank you very much for watching this. Here we go. As of the end of December 2020, Trump's team and others filed 59 lawsuits challenging the election outcome. All of those 59 were dismissed by Republican judges. Even Trump appointed Republican judges. In one lawsuit, Trump exclaimed on Twitter he won Pennsylvania because his poll watchers were barred from watching and thus unable to confirm his votes being counted. However, in court, where evidence of allegations are required, his team said there was a non-zero amount of watchers in the room, which seemed to baffle the Republican-appointed judge, who then replied, "I'm sorry then, what's your problem?" In another case, Trump and his family sent multiple tweets claiming massive fraud of several kinds, again in Pennsylvania, concerning hundreds of thousands of votes. However, again, in court where proof is needed, he contested not hundreds of thousands of ballots, but only 592. And surprising yet another judge when his team even claimed among those very few ballots, none were actually fraudulent. In a case in Georgia, Trump again claimed fraud from everything from the recount to fraudulent signatures, to the many grievances mentioned in Trump's call to the Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. However, the night before his much sought-after day in court, and supposedly having massive amounts of proof, Trump's team dismissed their case. You also have Attorney General William Barr, who investigated and said there's no evidence of massive fraud. Trump's head of cybersecurity for elections, Chris Krebs, said the same, was fired for saying it. The Department of Homeland Security agreed, so did the FBI, the NSA, the Arizona Supreme Court, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, twice, all 10 living former secretaries of defense, saying in an open letter, quote, "You've taken an oath to serve this country, not to any given individual." Chief of Staff and Secretary of Homeland Security General John Kelly, National Security Advisor John Bolton, Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, and other prominent Republicans, such as John Cornyn, Chuck Grassley, George W. Bush, Karl Rove, Chris Christie, even Lindsey Graham, saying the election was legitimate. And misinformation to distort the facts were presented and needs to stop. Even Mitch McConnell, after weeks of being sort of non-committal, said from the Senate floor, quote, "This will be the most important vote I've ever cast, and nothing before us proves illegality near the massive scale it would have taken to have tipped the entire election. And lastly, it wasn't even a close call." So finally, how did this happen? If virtually every arbitrating body of the U.S. government, including the Supreme Court, cabinet members, the most prominent members of Congress, and 60 court rulings, have found no actual evidence that the election was rigged, why do 3 out of 4 Republicans believe this? Could this doubt have been sown into the election outcome if a person says enough times that it's rigged? And if so, how often does that very person tend to say things are rigged when he loses? Well, in 2016, he said the FBI was rigged, the GOP was rigged when he lost Wisconsin to Ted Cruz, and the judge that ruled against him in the Trump University fraud case was rigged, and that the Emmys were rigged, and that the 2016 election that he ended up winning was rigged, and that the crowd was rigged. Then, prior to the 2020 election, he once again said it was going to be rigged. Which brings me back to my original question, even if there's no proof, can doubt be sown into an election outcome if a person says enough times it's rigged?